So last week I was talking to this Green Beret. Ryan is his name. And boy, we were talking, we had a good conversation, let me tell you that. We're talking about pressure in combat. And he kind of compared our combat, like mixed martial arts or any fighter, with the combat that they have. He forgets one thing though, we can't die. Very rarely somebody's gonna die in mixed martial arts or in kickboxing or whatever. These guys make a mistake. Anyway, I'm about to interview Ryan, okay? And I wanted to get into character because I wanted to feel what he feels. What if I have a high value target in front of me? How would I react, right? The adrenaline. Can I deal with this? And oh, shoot! Man down!
You scared me, I scared you. I was like, push your guy away. No testing before.
Okay, so this next guest, a friend of mine, last week he told me he's going to meet this Green Beret. He's got his leg blown off pretty much, got it fixed, and then went back into action. I go, oh, I want to come with you. I mean, that's an interesting guy. Would love to interview that guy. And boy, I read his book, Ryan Hendrickson, Tip of the Spear, and immediately I said, that's what she said. And he started laughing because he says, yeah, a lot of my friends are doing exactly the same what you're doing, boss. So imagine this. This is, guys, an IED, a person who looks for IEDs, improvised explosive devices. So it's a very dangerous job. He's the first guy out, so he might get shot the first. Or if he finds an IED that complete the wrong way, that's a problem. And as you already noticed, that happened in 2010, but then about 27 surgeries later and 2 years, he's decided to get back into action. So with that said, I'm going to ask him, interview him, and welcome to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Hendrickson. Ryan, how are you?
Oh, yeah. Man, it's awesome. I appreciate you guys having me on. This is awesome.
Dude, it's like I said, when I talked to Jason, you know, the guy who set that up, that interview between us, it's an amazing story. And then when I start reading your book, I mean, we have a lot of similarities if you think about it. You know, you got bullied, you always tried to prove yourself, your parents always taught you to make the money yourself, then, you know, you found something that you were passionate at, that because your life was lost, it was all over the place. That was with me too, and suddenly for you, the military came. For me, it was there. For me, mixed martial arts came around. Even our ages, I think you were 31 when you became a Green Beret, and I was 30 when I became the first time world champion. You see, so there's a lot of similarities that we have. We're going to talk about it, but let's first talk about what kind of kid were you growing up?
So I don't know. That's as far as growing up, there was never one area that I could call home because we were moving around so much. And at that time, I mean, it wasn't really that out of the normal, but if you didn't have a lot of, you know, our family, we were poor. And so it was just constantly moving around, and school after school after school. But I stayed in one town for about 5 years, and it's Lowell, Oregon. And so that's where I call my hometown, is because that's where I've been the longest. But if I look at where I live now in Pace, Florida, I've been here since about 2006 off and on with the military. So technically, I think Florida's Pace, Florida's my hometown, but I consider Lowell, Oregon, that's where, you know, I grew up at, just because we'd moved around so much. And, yeah, that's kind of the go and tell for a lot of people back then. So.
Yeah. Do you, you were bullied, and it was because you guys were poor, right? I was bullied because I had a skin disease. But it's the same effect, you know. You start to resent the world, and you start to speak up. And I guess you were in a lot of street fights, or I guess school fights.
So I did get bullied a lot for being poor, and that's kind of where I learned, you know, the schoolyard fighting. I'm not by any stretch a trained fighter, but I learned how to, basically do the talking with my fists or whatnot in school, just because you can only get bullied so much until there is that, that breaking point, which it used to kind of be a normal thing in schools. But unfortunately now we kind of see, what's happening when bullies get pushed or when people get pushed too far in schools. We don't, there's not a lot of dealing with it, with a fist fight anymore. Yep. It's a little extreme.
Yeah, I had the same thing. I always tell the people, you have to watch out, the bullies. I mean, because I was the guy who made a list from all the guys who bullied me. And as soon as I got my fighting skills, I went after that list. And every single person I was crossing off. And there were guys who were sitting literally and say, please, boss, I don't even remember me saying it. I go, well, I do remember. I'm very sorry. And I would knock them out, because I was very vengeful. So nowadays, when you see these school shootings, and I condone these things, of course, it's the worst thing, but I can understand it. I mean, because it's years and years and years. It didn't happen with me until I had my fighting skills. And suddenly when you have them, you're going to speak up. Well, you're going to speak with your fists, of course, and then you're going to solve the problem. So not a right way to do it, but hey, it's a very understandable way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, once I was introduced to wrestling, things changed a little bit, because now all of a sudden I found something that I was good at. My passion was football, but I was just trash. Just running around the field, just smacking people for no reason. Yeah. And I could rack up 100 yards and penalties a game easily, but just trash. But that was my passion. But wrestling, it was just something that you did in my town. You wrestled if you were in this town. And if I would have actually, I guess, enjoyed it, then I probably could have gone quite a few places. But the fact of the matter is I didn't really care for it. It's just what you had to do in our town. And now I look back, and some of the greatest life lessons that I have is from the wrestling room. Some of the greatest, our wrestling coach is one of the greatest mentors, I have in my life. And it's because there's so many life skills that you do learn through wrestling. And that's just my opinion. But I look back now and it's like, man, if you would have actually tried, you could have actually done something. But yeah. Well,
look at you. Look what you did, becoming a Green Beret. I mean, I read in the book, you start off with like 400 guys, and they got all filtered out, 55 are left, and from the 55, I believe it was 23 or 24 actually made the cut. Well, that's pushing through it. In karate, you have this saying, osu. You hear that a lot. A lot of people say os. It's not. It's O-S-U, osu. And it actually stands for a lot of things that we believe in. It comes from oshi, which means push, and shinobu means endure. To push and to endure. And those two words together, they made it into osu. That's why you see always that greeting among karatekas. It's kind of the hoorah that you have with the Marines, or however everybody's expressing themselves. But that simple word, osu, comes pretty much back to every tough job, I always say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome, because I've heard it before, but I didn't really know what they were saying. But that's that's awesome. But yeah, wrestling was a foundation for so much, in my life that I look back on, and having to tough it out and grit. And there was, I'm not saying wrestling today is any worse or better or anything like that, but society back then, you didn't have to worry about people's feelings as much. So our coach could crush you.
Yep. Yeah.
Literally, and he could let you know, why you lost, because you suck and you're not listening to what I'm telling you, and you can't get offended.
Yep.
You just and he said, here's the tools I'm going to give you so you don't suck. If you don't take these tools, you're going to continue to suck. but you can, you know what I'm saying? And those are the life lessons that I'm not 100% sure you could really do today without getting a complaint or hurting someone's feelings, but it was normal, back then, which wasn't that long ago. I'm not old.
But that's why we have such a sissy society right now. That if you don't let kids fail anymore because everybody has a prize and everybody needs to compete and they're lowering all the standards. I mean, you're setting them up for failure. What you just said, like spanking a kid, and I'm not talking about slapping him in the face. My dad, if he would simply slap me, like tap me on my butt, that's the only thing that will freak me out. But you cannot do that anymore because now you're hurting the kid. You're not hurting the kid. You just show him some manners. That's what we need. And the problem nowadays also is that when you go to school, the parents have to go to school because the kid was in trouble. The parents, they side with the kid and they start speaking up against the school instead of being on the school side and trying to get that nasty stuff, whatever your kid was involved in, out of it. They don't. And that is a problem we have right now. So I'm 100% with you. But that pushing, that pushed you also into the military. It was your dad, by the way, I believe, right? Who told you maybe the military is something for you?
So, yeah, I guess that's a polite way of saying it. He told me. But basically how it boiled down was, I'm a senior in high school and we have the talk. And he basically said, hey, look, you can go out and get a job. You can try and go to college, but let's face it, you're not really what colleges are. You're not college material.
Yeah.
Or you can join the military. Highly encourage you to join the military. See the world. Understand that the world is a lot better, or a lot bigger than this town of 1,300 people, and kind of get some experience under your belt, and then come back and figure out what you want to do after 4 years. But you can't stay here, because if I let you stay here, then you're going to be that guy at the gas station, 43 years old, pumping gas, talking about your senior year homecoming football game and all the glory you had during it or whatever. And so that's basically said, you can't stay here. So I went through the recruiter roulette, and in the mid 90s, the military didn't really need anybody. They were doing the downsizing. It was the Clinton era downsizing and all that. And so I checked with the Army first, because that was my dad's branch, and they're going through the jobs and just like, we could probably get you to boot camp in like 8 months, maybe a year. Air Force, they just, they thought it was cute that I even stumbled into their office once they saw my test scores. They're like, you're not really what we're looking for right now, man. But that's so cute. But the Marines, it was this big, guy, and he always had what looked like a full can of dip in his lip, and he couldn't talk without shoving his fingers like inches from your face in like a knife hand. And when he talked, chew spit went everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is super scary. I was scared of him. I was like, I don't want to join the Marines. You're going to kill me or something. And so, yeah, the Marines were out because I was scared. And then the Navy guy, he rolls around, and he's kind of like that the guy at 2 a.m. at a bar that's just like, all right, let me play cleanup, here and see what girls are left. He's looking around. He's like, hey man, you want to sail the world, go to exotic ports and see exotic women? And I'm 18. I'm like, yeah.
Put me in, coach.
You want to, yeah. He's like, you ever thought about, Top Gun, Tom Cruise, F-14 Tomcat pilot, maybe Navy SEAL like Charlie Sheen? It's like, yeah. He goes, cool, man. This is the job. Sign here. And yeah, I was like, all right, E1. This is going to work out great for me. So yeah, that's how I ended up in the Navy, and leaving my small town, which turned out to be an absolute blessing, because the Navy at that time, we weren't at war. I went everywhere. I was not flying F-14 Tomcats. No, that didn't really happen. But I did get the first thing he said, and that was travel the world. And it was an amazing experience.
That's exactly the same thing with me. I was never on a plane. And then when mixed martial arts came along, suddenly I'm fighting in Japan. 13-hour flight, I remember, all the way from Holland going to Japan. And that's where my real life started. That's where I got, introduced to different cultures, and boy, a whole new world opened up. What an amazing experience that is. And that's the military as well. So how was it, the military? Because, you didn't really find your niche in the beginning, right? You wanted to do something more. You were struggling with the inner demons, like why am I on this planet? What do I need to do here in order to fulfill what I'm destined to do?
Yeah, so I definitely, after joining the military, I knew, and I started getting my eyes opened up. I knew that, and I'm not anything special, but I knew that there was something bigger out there for me. I just couldn't figure out what it was because I'm 18, 19-year-old kid and didn't really know how to kind of pursue. So I'm just doing what I'm told. Basically turning food into shit, wake up, work, eat, sleep,
Yep.
And I'm not really doing anything. And so I do, so I ended up getting out of the Navy and going into the Navy Reserves after 4 years. And I went to Buds in 2002 and I fail out, and I'm sitting there and I take it really hard because I haven't, for as, hard as I had to fight through life, just as a child, my childhood, or, my not so God-given talent at every sport that I tried, it felt like work extremely hard to accomplish what I wanted to. Now, all of a sudden I'm sitting there and I'm being told that I'm not good enough.
Yeah, but wait. You had a pneumonia and you had a bad leg injury, right?
Yeah, but still, I mean, I was given the opportunity. I think we were on the second night of Hell Week, and I was given the opportunity to medical roll back to day one, and I said no. So I gave up on myself.
Okay.
And that was the first time when I looked back, and I was like, wow, you gave up on yourself. Why did you? And so I was battling a lot of those a lot of those insecurities of why did I do that? Why did I choose this path? Why wasn't I good enough? And all this other stuff, which strangely enough, those choices that I made there came back to actually benefit me when I was going through special forces. Because instead of, once I finally got over myself and quit and understood that I'm not as important as I think I am, and I am not, I am turning myself, and this is self-induced victimization. Yep. I'm feeling sorry for myself and I'm being a little bitch is what's going on because, oh, poor me, I didn't make the cut. Well, guess what? A lot of guys don't make the cut. Get over yourself and move on with life. Oh, by the way, use that failure as a lessons learned to make yourself stronger. Once I finally figured that out, then all of a sudden everything clicked, and then my career went the way that it went. But yeah, for a while I was just like, poor me, why me, and all this other stuff because, I didn't make it through a program that is extremely hard to make it through. So.
Yeah, but that's human nature. We all do that, right? Point the fingers anywhere else except ourselves. Yeah. But once you take a deep look inside and you realize, hey, I'm the fault here, and maybe I should toughen up a little bit. But exactly what you said, I already wanted to say that. It's like the universe has a different way of dealing with things. Everything will be given to you in the way it should be. And look what happened. So how did you get in there? Because there was a special rule or something that regular people suddenly could go and try out for the Green Berets?
So that whole that whole transition's that's a crazy story from going from the Navy and then the Navy Reserves and then civilian for a couple years and then the Air Force for 4.5 years. A nasty divorce, walking into the Air Force Personnel Administration office, seeing a poster on the wall about transitioning from the Air Force to the Army, and then walking up to the guidance counselor or the career counselor, and asking about the poster. And then 3 weeks later, I'm on my way to Fort Benning trying to figure out what in the hell I just did. But yes, there's an MOS, and I think it's still available, and it's called 18 X-ray, where if you meet, these certain requirements and you're at this certain age, you can come in off the street, and basically you go through infantry basic, airborne school, and then you go through the X-ray course, which is a ball buster in its own, then selection, then the Q course. And this is all saying that you proceed through these phases. There's a bit of a washout rate, but
yes, a big one.
There is as there should be. It's just the way it is. So.
Yeah, but you because we don't want this is we want the guys who can really do it. I was already talking about it in the opening. If you start with a group of like 400 guys and you get down to 23, well, you got a really solid group. But how on earth did you decide to become 18C, the engineer, looking for improvised explosive devices? That is not, the safest job you can get in the Army.
So how that all came about was basically, my transition into the Army was I needed to make myself extremely busy so I wasn't dealing with life. And that was the divorce and everything else that just happened. And so the X-ray course, and as I'm going through, they asked, what MOS would you like to be? And the recruiting poster, which is great, or the video, it's like 18 Charlie, and the guy's putting in a charge, and boom, and big explosions. And I was like, I like big explosions. Yeah. This is going to be great. My only job in the world is going to be blowing things up. Aha. That's what the recruiting poster wants you to think. Yeah. And the videos. So I go into the 18 Charlie course, and we're doing demolitions and construction and all this other stuff, which is great. And it's on paper, the greatest job in Special Forces is the engineer. There's a couple caveats to that. Number one, as the engineer in a combat environment that likes to use IEDs and landmines and stuff like that, you're the subject matter expert for this. Well, in the course, we went through 2 days of IED and landmine removal instruction. Not really what you would consider an expert. And and then what I also didn't realize is the 18 Charlie on a Special Forces operational detachment is a glorified, extremely lethal supply guy. I was like, well, what are you talking about? They were like, oh, yeah, you got to do all the inventories and you have to make sure all the paperwork for all the equipment and you're signed for millions of dollars. And I was like, no, I just blow up. This is someone else's job. They're like, no, this is your job, stud. I was like, geez. So yes, you get the basic understanding, mine detectors, mine removal theory and stuff like that out of Big Army Handbook. But everything I learned with IEDs was through Afghans. Yep. Why? Because an Afghan can look up a road and point out every spot where an IED's at. It's like, how do you know? And he goes, I'm Afghan. I've lived in this village my entire life. I can tell you if this rock has been moved, and it's been moved. So there's an IED there and there and there. But I learned a lot of my techniques with IEDs from Afghans that have lived in that environment their entire lives, and they've dealt with the Russian landmine situation. So I learned about landmines and Russian techniques from our Afghan counterparts. And all I did was, the key to success with anything, I think, is understanding that you're a human being and the person that you're talking to is a human being, and you're not better than them. They're not better than you. And if you actually listen, not just hear somebody, but if you listen to them, you're probably going to learn something. And if you do one more step, and that is put your pride away and actually try and learn, you can learn a lot. And so when I was dealing with our Afghan counterparts, I realized that they're some of the best in the world at finding landmines and IEDs. They don't always have the best technique, like walking out there with a pickaxe and just starting to go to town on the ground. I'm like, hey, man, okay, you know what you're doing. But they're some of the best in the world at finding IEDs. And so all I did was became this sponge for them, not necessarily to teach, but for them to mentor me. And that's what I got. I mean, I found.
But you talk about it. You said once you put your pride to the side, and I talk to a lot of fighters like that, because as fighters and as military guys and everybody, we believe that we're better than everybody else. There's something about us that makes us believe that, and sometimes we need to have this in order to prepare for certain things. So I understand that. But I tell my students the same thing. Once you learn how to deal with constructive criticism, because you don't want to take it. Somebody tells you something, or you should do the armbar like this, boss. I go, I got it. You know, how do you know better than I do? But once you submit to that and you just start listening, like you said, you know, that's when you really start growing in what you want to do. But it's a hard thing to overcome, right? I mean, to just let your pride go and listen to other people. Somehow it's a weird thing.
Yeah, it definitely is, because pride bites a lot of special operators in the ass.
Yep.
It really does, because you feel like being wrong or failing is a weakness. And that was another thing that I learned from, just being a little bitch about failing out of buds, was the fact that you can learn a lot from failure.
Yep.
Matter of fact, some of the most successful people in the world have failed constantly, but they don't. But they use those failures as guidance and lessons learned to finally, succeed. And so that's one thing that's really hard in our community, is people misinterpret failure.
Yep.
And it's automatically linked to a negative. You're not good enough. You're not this. You let everyone down and all this other stuff. When it's actually, failing could be one of the most constructive tools out there, because if you don't know what it's like to fail, then you're not going to be able to fully succeed. You won't understand success without failure.
100%. I had this with fighting. They always ask me, I see these fighters who after a loss, they're crushed. They're crying in the dressing room. I never had that. I partied as hard as what I said. Okay, lesson learned. Let's say I got caught by a lag lock. Well, if I'm going to get caught again by that same lag lock, yeah, I'm an idiot. But officially, if I really start focusing now on defending that particular leg lock, I actually become a better fighter. So this loss actually made me a stronger fighter. And I always thought like that. I was never down, never sad. I just said, okay, I need to step up my game. And this is how you get better. So yeah, that's a big one. You see, that's another correlation. We were talking about that when we were at the bar. Also, the pressure, the amount of pressure that you have. And I want to talk about that now, because for me, the very first time that I fought, it's very easy to fight in a nice and safe environment, right? In the gym. And we got these badasses, and these guys, they work circles around certain current world champions. Yet when you put them in a ring under pressure, they can't perform. They can't seem to find the quietness and the calmness. And with you guys, well, you're going to get killed if you can't handle that. And sure, you can train on it, and they put you through hard, rigorous exercises and muscle memory. I all get that. But you know as well as I do, everything is up in the mind. And when the mind decides not to go, you're not going to go. So my first fight was a very ugly fight. I won by knockout, body kick to the liver. But I always tell this to people, at the moment I knocked him out, if they would have blindfolded me and they would have called in 5 other guys in Thai boxing shorts, and they would stand next, and then I turn around, look at all 5 of them, and they would ask me, who did you fight? I don't think I could point them out, because I wasn't fighting, I was fighting a silhouette. I was hitting the face, the head, not particularly on the jaw or the nose, I was just hitting the target, whatever necessary, whatever means necessary. And thankfully I was powerful, I got him, but I was super uncontrolled. Well, for me, that's a fight I might lose. For you, that's a fight you might die. So let's talk about that, your very first one, because I already read when you went over the Helmand River, you know, you had to build like an improvised floating device to bring your whole team over. And that was pretty much the very first assignment you had. So there was a lot of pressure on you. And then you're also going through your mind, what happens? How am I going to react once they start firing? Because you don't know yet.
So, yeah, so up to that point, we had been to the mission you're talking about. We had been in firefights daily. And my first fight that I got into where it was actual, someone's trying to kill you. That's a very weird realization, because you go through this range of emotions. And if people haven't been, I guess, experienced that 7.62 cracking over your head or an RPG hitting the wall by you, you ask some pretty dumb questions like, why are you trying to hurt me? What did I do to you? Oh, that's right. Yeah. But that's the thing is your mind, you're trying to rationalize the fact that somebody wants to take your life, because that's on a whole nother, that's a level that is, it's very hard to compute in your mind, because there's not a lot of people in the world that are going to have to answer the question of what would I do if someone's trying to kill me. And men have been going to war for hundreds of years to answer that one question. What will I do when someone's trying to kill me? How will I react when someone's trying to kill me? And I did, just through our training, because I've heard before that you can't train fight or flight.
Yeah.
But I believe you can. And the Army and probably mixed martial arts also, I don't know that much about it, but they break you down to a level to where all you are is a shell of a man. You have no sleep, you haven't eaten, you're cold, you're wet, you're the very basic shell. And then you start to train. And people are like, well, why would you train when you can't even, think about anything? It's like, because you're training the fight. Yep. Instead of the flight.
Yep.
And you're training your muscle memory, because one thing that I did that I learned, and I noticed this in fights too, that, when I was so nervous, I'm about ready to get in a fist fight, and I'm super nervous and my hands are shaking, stuff like that, because I'm not a controlled fighter. I don't do it professionally. So my adrenaline overrides my body. But then you get to this point when you get hit, or that first punt, when you hit him first, all of a sudden everything, it goes into slow motion, and I don't really know who you are. I don't, like, you're just a silhouette at that point in time, and the adrenaline has taken over. And then at the end of the fight, if somebody was to say, go step by step through what you did, I can't.
Yep.
Well, a firefight is the exact same thing. You can, once those rounds start, especially in ambush, holy cow. But once those rounds and that noise and that surprise and that adrenaline spike, and then you just hit muscle memory, first muscle memory, incoming, you hit the ground, or rounds are coming in, you hit the ground, you find out distance and direction, and you start to return fire, while hopefully communicating with the rest of the team, hey, this is distance, direction, fire superiority, and you move on from there. But that adrenaline override, I can't tell you why.
Yep.
I can't tell you, what exactly happened in that first initial adrenaline spike. All I know is that we got engaged, and I returned this amount of fire because I have this many empty mags, and apparently the enemy's dead, because we were able to, now I'm starting to pick myself up and figuring out what happened. But that's when you start to, guys, inherently you start questioning, because you want to know, like, wow, that was pretty badass, but I don't remember what happened. Hey man, what did you see? Hey man, what was good? So you start to formulate your opinion on the incident that just took place from your buddies and the outsiders and the people that were also there, but they're giving you their opinion on how the fight went down. Because if it's a good enough fight, you're probably not going to remember very much of it.
Yeah, and you were talking about, you just mentioned when you hear the bullets fly, so there's a sound and there's a crack sound, and you said the crack sound Is the sound that means they're very close to your head?
Yeah, yeah, that's a horrible feeling. Yeah, that means they see you, and they at least have you iron sighted, and they're starting to put rounds downrange, and it's a horrible feeling.
And one of your first firefights, you were in an RG-33. That's like a mine vehicle, right? And they start shooting at you with bulletproof windows, but the windows started slowly but surely giving out, right? It's like the force field you see in a spaceship. You go like, okay, we can't get hit a lot because it's almost coming through. And it was a very close call, right?
Yeah, that's when I realized the power behind a Dishka and the Dishka rounds. And we took 2 direct hits to our front windshield with a Dishka round. And it's basically, I know there's probably some gun nuts that are listening. So don't quote me on it or start throwing some, but it's a little bit more powerful than a 50 cal round. I don't know the specs. Yeah, but we started getting front windshield shots with a Dishka, and it's like, okay, hey, we are one more of these rounds, and this glass is gone.
Yeah.
And we could either go into the Hellman River on the right side, or we can go into the cliff on the left side, which you can't. You're just going to be bumping up against the rock wall. So basically, we have to drive straight through this ambush, which is what you do anyways.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah, you power through it the best that you can. You don't ever want to stop in the kill zone, but hopefully you can stop before the kill zone. But it wouldn't be an ambush if you knew where it was going.
Yeah.
Where it was at. So,
and it's a funny thing also. It's like the very first fight that I said, I was all over the place. You were talking about your very first gunfight. But, you know, I won. With you survived. And that's a hook. Now you're addicted kind of to that feeling, right? With all the fighters also, when they win the first fight, it's like, okay, I really like this feeling. And you talked about it in your book. You had the same thing. And you were like, whoa, it makes you feel alive at a whole new level.
Combat, and I'm fairly certain mixed martial arts also, because wrestling was that way for me. Wrestling isn't mixed martial arts, but I think you have the same kind of adrenaline and fear of your opponent, which is a healthy fear.
Yep.
If you're smart, you do anyways.
Yep.
But that adrenaline rush is dangerous.
Yep.
Because it's addicting, and you survived, and then you start to see what else you can survive, and as you continue to survive these close calls, like I if there was ever this technology out there that they could laser point every single round during a firefight, I would say that a majority of us we're living our life by inches with the amount of rounds that's come in. But it's addicting because, I mean, the initial crack of an AK or a PKM or RPG or the IED, whatever sets off the firefight, and your adrenaline goes through the roof, and then it's almost. It almost becomes a God complex, because it's like, I'm going to take your life because you're trying to take my life. And you don't really rationalize it like that. But in the end, you know, if you sit back and you think, or if you've had a kill where, you know, you actually know that you killed the dude, you kind of, it does become addicting, which I don't want anybody listening to this be like, let's send some 3-letter agencies over this guy's house. I'm explaining it the best that I can.
Yeah.
But the adrenaline rush and that spike and that fear, like, fear is addicting, controlled fear. And that adrenaline rush and that mentality of, wow, I survived this.
Yep.
You start to do things to get that rush again and again and again.
Yep.
And I always tell everybody, it's like you're chasing the dragon.
Yep.
And the problem is you're never going to catch the dragon, but it will catch you one day. That's guaranteed.
But also, Yeah, but also what it is, it's like any other drug out there. You know, once you get, now you're used to this kind of level. And that, if that becomes normal, you need more craziness. You see, slowly but surely you start looking for more and more. I had a friend of mine who was sick as a dog. He was on a boat and the boat got into a storm. And he was throwing up, he was so sick, and suddenly he fell, a really hard fall, and his head hit something, and that woke him up. And suddenly he started challenging the weather, because now he really embraced it. He wanted that fear. And man, after that boat trip, he's been going back a lot of times when there's bad weather, because he wanted to match it. It's almost like he wants to die, you know? He's looking for that one thing that can get him higher than the very last time. And that's, of course, with you guys, that's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think, yeah, as far as combat and wanting to get that next rush, that next fix, and a lot of people are going to listen and, man, that sounds like a drug addiction. It is.
Yep.
It is. But always chasing that next high, that next fight, that next, wow, I can't believe I survived this. Once those times go away, like currently in America right now, we are not in an armed conflict. There are guys that are dealing death all over the world. We know that. But we're not in an armed conflict. Afghanistan is over with. The problem now is the military, they train and they thrive off of training troops for battle, depending on this high, knowing that this high is going to continue to, push you for the next high, combat battle, which means you are going to fight the enemy, and our tactics are superior to yours. So we're going to kill the enemy, which is the overall objective. Now we have a problem because we don't have a war that guys, because we'll be honest, guys is like a lot of soft dudes. And I would say the majority is soft. We all look forward to that next combat deployment.
Yep.
Why? Because that's the next chance that I get to prove myself.
Yep.
Well, now we don't have that. And so the next thing that takes over is alcohol or drugs something like that. And the suicide rate amongst veterans right now, I don't think we've even seen a smidgen of the crisis that we're about ready to, once Afghanistan actually sinks in to a lot of veterans that this is it. It's done. And that high is gone. And I can't believe I survived this, because now if you look on social media, guys are living in the past, which I'm not necessarily for or against. Yep. But you're seeing videos of, combat deployments and the brotherhood with our Afghan partners. And, here was us, with whatever partners we had, whether it was the Dutch or the Aussies or the Brits, and getting in these fights and doing this. Now people are starting to relive that, which is giving them kind of that fix. Mm-hmm. The problem is once that goes away and that fix is gone, because it never leaves you. You have to learn how to manage it. Yep. That's the reason why we do. We have guys that have operated at this level, and they choose to make poor decisions based on getting that next fix. And I believe that we haven't even seen the full, crisis when it comes to suicide. Yep. And with service members, because of that fix is gone. Yep. Well, we had it with fighters, exactly the same thing. It happened with me. Suddenly you don't have that high from knocking somebody out in front of 15,000 people anymore. That's a big thing, man. It just feels really good, people going crazy. And suddenly if it's gone, exactly the same thing that you said. You replace it with alcohol and drugs, which was my choice, was alcohol in the beginning, and then later a pain pill addiction, they got all that stuff. But you try to replace it. I have a fighter that I know, Pat Miletich. He was also UFC champion, I believe, the UFC 6 champion. And what he's doing, because he saw it coming, he goes like, I'm not want to end up like you, boss, what you're doing right now, and some other guys. So he started chasing tornadoes. That's his high now. Instead of fighting,
Well, now he's looking for tornadoes, and he's got a special car, and he's going to go over there, and he's trying to film it from the inside. But it's a very dangerous thing. Let's jump now to the biggest high, pretty much. Well, the biggest high and the biggest low, right? I believe it was 2010, September 11. Ooh, weird date as well. That you're there. That day will forever be on your mind, I guess.
So September 11th, 2010 was the day that we kicked off this major valley clearance operation. And we were in the Chutu River Valley, and there was suspected between 2,000 and 2,500 fighters, which is a large number, Afghan math. So let's say there's probably a couple hundred fighters in the valley, realistically. But still, that's a large number because it's been proven throughout the years of war that those who hold the high ground have an advantage over probably a far superior enemy force that is attempting to take the high ground.
Yep.
So we're doing this valley clearance, and valley is exactly what it says. There's ridges on both sides. There's a river, the Helmand River, and you're in the low ground clearing all the villages there of Taliban fighters. So September 11th, we kick off the mission, and we get up to our first staging point, to where it's like, all right, let's regroup, men, weapons, equipment, make sure everybody's good from the infill in. And then here's our first objective for my team. This was an entire company clearance op with a couple hundred Afghan commandos and all kinds of stuff. But our objective was moving south to north. And so we get to our first stop, and we do our checks, everything like that. And then it's September 12th, like 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, okay, so first objective, we rehearse everything for weeks before. And now it's time to go. So I turn around to our interpreter. I was like, hey, man, we just got the green light from Siege of Sodef. So just like we practiced, just like we trained, let's Afghans lead the way. This is their village, so let's go. And he turned around and he told them, all right, guys, it's time. And nobody's moving. It's like, all right. Maybe you didn't explain it to them properly. I know these are your people and you speak Pashtun, but let me re-explain it to you again. Let's fucking go. We're in the low ground. The sun is it's going to start getting light out in about 4 hours. And that's when all the machine guns up on the ridge are going to open up because we know they're there.
Yep. So
let's go. And he's like, they don't want to go. Okay. Why? It's too dangerous. And they said that you're better trained and more equipment. You should go first. I was like, yeah, I mean, if this was, a clearance operation in like Dallas, Texas, I would totally agree with you.
Yeah.
My country, I go first. But this is actually their village. They're militiamen from this village. So let's go. Like they're not going to go. Okay. So I turn around to tell my counterpart, hey, man, these guys aren't moving. And he grabs me and he goes, hey, Ryan, what is Nick doing down there at that compound? And the compound was about 25 meters away. And we had, quote unquote, the high ground to the compound. So if anybody messed around, we can handle it. Well, he had wandered down to the compound and he was our only interpreter. And I was like, hey, and he goes, go get Nick away from that compound. Okay. So I moved down to the compound breach point or entryway or doorway, whatever you want to call it. And I grabbed him and was like, hey, man, what, in my lane, in my way of aggressively telling him he's wrong, quietly, because we're still noise and light discipline. I pull him away from the breach point and I tell him to move back to our position. And then I cover his withdrawal because as of right now, beyond that doorway, we don't know what's inside that compound. It was a breach point that led into a large courtyard, which then you have different mud huts inside the courtyard. Well, we don't know what's in there, so you do what you're trained to do, and basic training is I cover his movement back to the high ground, and then I move back. Well, unfortunately, I saw something move in the compound, and I decide that I want to hopefully get to shoot this thing that was moving. Hopefully it was a fighter that was trying to get position I'm in, I can kill him, and then I'll feel great. Why? Because it's a high and it's adrenaline.
Yeah.
And so, like a dumbass, I step inside the breach point so I can look around one of my blind spots, and boom, I stepped on a pressure plate IED that was right inside of the doorway, breach point, whatever you want to call it. And so that was 0 to like 30, or no, it was like 3 a.m., maybe 3:30 in the morning, September 12th. And so I'm laying there on the ground, and I don't really know what just happened, because you can't really train to step on an IED.
Yeah.
So I'm laying there, and I'm just like, wow, something hit me hard, and it doesn't hurt, but I can't move and I can't breathe right now because of all the dust and ammonia from the explosives and all this other stuff. And I was like, I need to breathe. Why can't I get up? And I keep struggling, and I'm starting to hyperventilate. And I'm like, all right, man, calm down. You know, again, something I learned in wrestling. Calm down, get your bearings, and then let's figure out what's going on here. But don't hyperventilate, because you're going to suffocate. And so as the dust starts to settle a little bit, now now the sun is starting, it's not coming up, but the sky is getting light to where you don't necessarily need your night vision anymore. You can see in front of you. And as the dust starts to settle a little bit, I look down and I see my boot at a 90-degree angle to my leg. And so it still doesn't hit me. And I'm not, like, for the listeners out there, I'm dumb. So it takes me a minute. But it still doesn't hit me. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, why is my boot making an L at the bottom of my leg? I was like, that's not right. Let me investigate further. So I grab behind my right knee and I pick my leg up, and my boot flops over to the back, so where my heel is hitting my hamstring. And I was like, that's really weird. I don't recall why that's happening. And there's these two pearly white objects sticking out of my pant leg. And I was like, man, that's really white, because bone. I don't think bone should be called white. It should be called like bone, because that was the whitest thing I've ever seen, and it almost glowed in the dark. And so I see these two white objects sticking out of the bottom of my pant leg. I was like, wonder what those are. And then reality hit. That's your leg, and that's your tib and your fib. And then it was like, bam, the pain. Once my brain was like, hey, your leg is kind of not on your body, then the pain hit. And then it was like, all right, now I guess I got to do what I've seen other guys do. And it's like, I'm hit. But man, it hurt so bad. But it did. It took some seconds for me to realize, like, what I stepped on an IED. Yeah,
Yep.
It's crazy.
And it was hard for you, you're talking about it, to put a tourniquet on there, because of the pain. You couldn't get it figured out, but you knew you were bleeding a lot, so you needed to get the hell out of there. But then you also know that, well, after an IED explosion, probably Afghan fighters are there, and it's a danger for your team to come and pick you up.
Yeah, so we have a saying in Afghanistan: where there's one IED, there's 5 or 7 or 3 or 10. But they never just put one IED out there. That defeats the purpose. If you have a main charge, there's probably secondaries all around it. So a team, when the Taliban, they are brilliant in the way that they feed off of our compassion for life. They feed off of how we value life. For them, a glorious death is the same as us for life and living. And so they master that emotion in warfare. And so they'll put an IED out there, and then they'll put IEDs around the area, because they know Americans never leave a man behind.
Yep.
We will go and get you. We will lose 100 men to take one home. That's ingrained into us as Americans, and the Western world, has the same ideals. so they use that to their advantage. So when I'm laying there, I know my team can't rush to me because as the engineer, I've trained them in team training that you can't run up on a guy that just hit an IED because there's multiple IEDs in the area.
Yep.
So I'm trying to put my tourniquet on, but I can't get it tight. I don't know I don't know if it's shock or just kind of accepting that, I'm probably going to die here today. Because I remember that there was a point when I was laying on the ground and I looked back and I could hear my team, orders are being given and guys are, it's controlled chaos, but I can hear my team getting security up and everything like that and starting to clear down to me. But it was all in this really long tunnel, like it was so far away. And I kept looking back and they just seemed like they were getting further and further away. And I did. I mean, I don't know good, bad, right, indifferent, but I remember laying my head back at a point and I said, I'm going to die here today.
Yep.
And I, people may think like, oh, you just accepted death, you gave up. Maybe, but I don't know, like that emotion or that understanding that I'm probably going to die here today. It's very hard to war game that. Mm-hmm. And I don't really even know how to explain it because I don't think of it as giving up. But then again, I wasn't fighting to just keep cranking that tourniquet on because I didn't have the strength or what it was. But yeah, it was it was an emotion that I go back to and I think of constantly. Like, did I give up on myself?
Yep.
Was I accepting, defeat? Like, I don't know. And it's, I think that's the question that I'll always ask myself. But
yeah, but you have to think. A friend of mine is also a fighter, Sam Greco, K1 fighter, badass. He had a heart attack. And he said at the moment he had a heart attack, he says all the stuff that you care for in this world, he says, like the house and having the perfect car and having this, he says nothing matters. The first thing you think about, did I tell my family I love them very much? All these emotions are coming. Were these emotions that immediately started firing at you?
So when I was laying there, unfortunately, my relationship with God has grown over the years. I've been a Christian my whole life, but I've reached out to God when it was like, hey man, I really am in a bad situation right now. Can you please help me out? But I did. I reached out to God laying there, and it wasn't, can you please help me out? It was a prayer for forgiveness because of the life that I led and the amount of destruction that I had in my past from just being just an asshole and not a good, human being. And so as I was laying there, I had a lot of regrets over the life that I lived. And that's when I understood my dad's advice earlier on in my life was that you don't ever want to be that old man with a bunch of I wish I would have, or I wish I wouldn't have done that. And laying there on the river that day, it hit me. I was like, wow, I'm not a good person.
Yep.
And I do, like, for people listening and whatnot, I don't shove religion down people's throat, but I do believe that God allowed me to hit that IED and allowed me to expire twice at the, I'm horrible with my rolls. I think it was like a roll 2 or whatever. I don't know, roll 3. But medical facility when I got medevaced out. But he allowed all that because I think, and just in the way my mind works, God's like, hey, look, man, all right, you're fucking up and you're not listening to me.
Yeah.
This is gonna suck really bad, but I have to do this because you're not listening to me. So this is what's gonna happen. And boom, and then the chain of events the way they did, because it did open up my eyes being near death that I was not a good man.
Yep.
You know?
But it's a great way. It's a great way to find out, because this is where you kind of your real life started, right? I mean,
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, because once you understand it, that means now you can start working on it. You see, now there's a different purpose in life, you know. And for you, the purpose, you see, because yeah, so you flatlined twice, right? And coming back from that, then of course you're going to start thinking, okay, now I gotta fix my life, but in your mind you need to go back. But there's a lot of options out there. First of all, if they take your leg, it's going to be the least painful, and then it's going to be okay. But Dr. Sue, you talked about him, he said it's never done before. You know, we might save it. It's like a 15% chance, but it's going to hurt incredible. And then your answer, of course, was, well, you know, if it's the first one, I like to be that very first person to try it out. So let's talk about that.
So yeah, so they gave me so when I got blown up, it was a pretty good time to get blown up if you're gonna do that. And the IED I stepped on was a pretty good one if you want to have some groundbreaking limb reattachment surgery done, because my IED was, you know, pretty clean. It shot straight up through my foot and it exited out at my calf. My doctor told me, Dr. Shu told me, the only reason really why they amputate is tissue damage. He said, I can fix any bone. I was like, okay. And my IED was pretty clean. So, you know, I got to, you know, Taliban hooked me up on that one, which I appreciated. Good, clean IED there. But so when I got to Brooks Army Medical Center, that's when I actually started to grow, you know, as a man, as a Christian. But I went back to that whole victimization, entitlement mindset, which I talk about this a lot because I really feel that our country is suffering from an entitled victimization catastrophe right now.
100%.
But what happened was this range of emotions hit me in the hospital. So when I finally got to sit back and dissect what had happened, I became entitled to my injury. Well, I did this for your freedoms and I got blown. I almost lost my life for this and this. So I started to become entitled to this injury that in 2010, everyone was getting injured. But I started to become entitled. And then when I wasn't getting what I needed, the response I needed from people, because you cannot fulfill entitlement.
Yep.
It is an empty void that you'll never, like I deserve, will never be fulfilled.
Yep.
It's impossible. Once you don't get what you feel you deserve because you're entitled to this status or whatever it is because of whatever situation happened to you in life, you become a victim.
Yep.
So I became a victim to my injury. And I went down the poor me, feeling sorry for myself role because people, like, I wasn't getting that entitled void in my life filled of what I thought I deserved because of what I thought I was.
Yep.
And my dad had a conversation with me. He said, look, you know, the injury, we got to have a talk. So the injury you have is bad. No one's going to deny that. As dark as it seems right now, and you know, as much pain as you're in right now, he's like, it seems bad, but we have to have a talk because you're heading down a path that I know all too well. He said, the way I look at it is you have two choices. The first choice is you can let this injury become you. You can become this injury. You'll no longer be Ryan Hendrickson. You will be this injury. And what's going to happen is this injury is going to take you over, and you're going to start to, and you're going to feel you deserve a certain, you know, whatever it is because of this injury. And once you don't get what you feel you're entitled to because it's impossible, you'll never get it. They'll never be able to quench the entitlement thirst. It's impossible. You're going to become a victim to it. And as your victimization mindset takes a hold of you because of this injury, you're going to push everybody away from you when you don't get what you feel that you deserve because of your entitlement. And as you push everybody away from you and you seclude yourself, you're going to start, you're going to make bad decisions, usually with alcohol or whatnot, which is why a lot of the 22 a day is there right now, because guys seclude themselves. Individuals seclude themselves after they've pushed everybody away because you don't understand what I'm going through and nobody can help me. And that's when bad decisions start to get made. And that's also, in my opinion, it's a big reason for the 22 a day.
Yep.
Or he said, your second option is you got the golden ticket. You may not see it right now, but you have the reset button. Most men will never get this in life. You can go back. You remember all that stuff that you were thinking when you were laying there thinking you were going to die? Well, you can change all that. God gave you a reset button. You can use this injury to make yourself a stronger man. You can use this injury to renew your relationship with God. He said, oh, by the way, you can use this injury to help others. He said, that's the calling that I think God put that IED in your path for, is you can use this injury to help others. It's not about what you do in life. It's about how you help other people in life.
Yep.
And even when you're down, are you getting back up, but holding that hand out to help somebody else up while you're getting up too? He said, that's the secret of life. He said, you can do what you want to do, but those are the two choices. And I highly recommend you use this injury to make yourself a stronger man. This is a speed bump in life, because he said, son, I don't think you're going to survive the victimization of this. I think you're going to be another one of the statistics, because this is too tough of a situation to not, that basically he's saying, I think you'll commit suicide if you go down this path.
And do you believe that he said that because he kind of was in that position, right? A bunch of years back, and when he got saved by Pastor Merrill, I believe, who just out of the blue, but that was also, he had some demons, and he got saved at that moment. He thought, oh man, I see the same path for my son right now. You think he spoke from that experience?
He did. He spoke from the experience of becoming the Vietnam vet. And I have a hard time saying that, because the way a lot of these veteran Vietnam vets were treated when they came home was wrong. Absolutely wrong. But he, and this is from his words, not mine, but he said, I became that entitled Vietnam vet. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I've seen. I did all this for you, ungrateful sons of bitches, and all this other stuff. And then he became victimized because he wasn't getting the response that he felt he deserved, because people didn't respect or understand or whatever it was, which they're not going to.
Yep.
And even, number one, they weren't there. But even if they were there, they weren't you.
Yep.
It's like, and so they're not going to understand. And then victimization takes hold to a point to where he very easily, and in my dad's case, very easily, because he had the shotgun and he had the whole plan in motion until God intervened, but could have been another suicide statistic for veterans because of the entitlement and victimization mindset. That is, it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous, but it's happening so much.
So, but okay, so now you're in that situation. So was it directly your thought, okay, he's 100% right, I want to get back. That's my goal now, to get back, to see if you can overcome that. It's like when you lost a fight, the best thing is to schedule another fight, because that will probably get you out of it. And if it doesn't, if you lose the fight again, at least you tried, and if you're very honest with yourself, that should be okay. But for you to make that decision, once you lay there in bed and the Dr. Sue gives you all the options, he says, okay, we can do it, but it's going to be skin grafting, it's going to be enormously painful. And it took, 26, 27 surgeries in total? How many?
Yeah, 27.
So how do you decide, after all that you say, hey, I want to jump back, I want to go. Now I have a goal. I want to go back and do exactly the same job that I was doing. Because if you think about it, it's kind of crazy. Is it something because you felt you didn't finish it yet? This was your story? How do you build on it? Do you say, oh, I have to prove this for the world? This was proving to yourself? What was going on there?
So a lot of that is I mean, a lot of it boils down to what my wrestling coach used to say is like, you're just too dumb to quit. It's like, okay. But there was a couple key incidents that happened. Number one, right after I got blown up, we can intercept the Taliban's communication because they only use an FM frequency. So we can intercept their comms and we can listen in on what they're saying. And when I stepped on that IED, they were on the radio cheering and playing that stupid celebration music that they do whenever they feel like they have this great victory. And so that was burned into my mind because I could listen to them celebrating. And then I also had, I had a little drive because my sergeant major told me if you can get cleared, medically cleared and, or through rehab and everything like that, then he's like, yeah, I'll send you back to war. And I asked him later on, I was like, did you really think? He goes, no, man, I could tell you that because there was no point that you weren't ever going to go back. So it's easy. Yeah. But it gave me that mindset. But then also my dad, another thing from the old man, he said, hey, look, there's going to come a point in time. Everybody gets it. Some men, it's when they're old, some before then, but you're going to have the opportunity to look back on your life and how you dealt with certain situations, how you handled things. And he said, you're going to either look back and you're going to be disgusted. You're going to be depressed and basically you're going to feel like a failure because of a way you handled a situation, or you can look back and you're going to be proud and you're going to know that you gave it everything you could. And you did, you picked yourself up and helped others along the way and all this other stuff. He said, this situation is exactly that. He said, when you're an old man looking back on how you handled this life-changing situation, are you going to be proud of yourself or are you going to be, are you going to be disgusted with yourself? He said, that's up to you. And that's what you do right now. And so that advice right there, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to, number one, help other people. And what I mean by that is that surgery, the exploratory limb salvage / reattachment, they were getting a lot of research for other people down the road. And a lot of the research that went into my leg, it helped out with some of the Boston bombing. People that they got hurt really bad, and everybody knows that situation. And anyways, so number one is if it succeeds, 15% chance, but if it succeeds, it's going to help a lot of people. Yep. Okay, great. Boom. And number two, well, I don't think there is a number two. I think I was just like, man, okay, let's do it. But yeah, that now all of a sudden it's like, all right, I have a goal, and you have to have goals. If you have no goals, then your life has no purpose. You have no meaning. If you're not trying, if you're not moving towards an objective, then what are you doing? You're, again, like I said in the beginning, you're turning food into shit. That's it. And life is running you. You are not running life. And so I put these goals there. I want my unit is deploying back to Afghanistan in January 2012. I want to be on that deployment. Everybody, except for Dr. Shu and Johnny, my physical therapist, everyone's like, hey man, you need to manage expectations because it's not going to happen. And then I get medically retired from the Army because of my injuries. So I go through the whole waiver process to get to stay on active duty through a continue on active duty waiver. Okay, that's in my that's there, and then just hitting rehab as hard as I can. Sometimes a little too hard, but it's just trying to grow back that 2 or 2.5 inches of tibula, and I've got metal rods coming out of every single open spot of bone I have on my leg just to stabilize it so I can grow everything back. And now all of a sudden skin grafts take, and I have no infections, and wow, your skin grafts healed a lot quicker than we thought, which skin grafts are absolutely horrible. And that stupid heat lamps that drives you, that's a nightmare. But
and you got a new nickname, right? Wolverine, because you were healing like crazy?
because I'm healing like crazy, and I'm healing fast. And so what all of a sudden is looking like 2 years in the X fix, which is that bird cage with all the rods going in your leg. Now all of a sudden at 9 months, it's coming off, and now I can start to rehab without the X fix on. And next thing you know, it's November 2011, and I'm cleared to return to my unit with a couple caveats. I'm non-deployable, and I'm on a dead man's profile, which means I can sit at a desk and do administration work for the rest of my time.
Yeah.
But as with everything in life, it's all about taking opportunities when they present itself and or kind of scamming the system a little bit.
Yeah. I heard that.
And so I get released back to 7th Group. Now it's November 2010, or I'm sorry, 11, and I'm going back to 7th Special Forces Group. And so I know my unit is deploying in January. I don't want to make a big stink and put myself on the radar as non-deployable while my unit's still here. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to, show back up to work, do my job. I'll get in, kind of stay low. And then once the unit deploys, the element that's left back in the rear, they don't know who I am.
Yep.
And so now all I need is a group to basically bless off that I'm deployable. How do I do that? Well, we had this facility, this program called the Thor 3 program.
Yep.
And they take trainers from everywhere. We had a hockey physical fitness coach there. We had Paul. He was Tito Ortiz, athletic trainer. We had physical therapists, occupational therapists, all these people that are there to return soldiers to the fight, whether it's an injury or you got wounded or anything. But this, the government has spent this amount of money on these individuals. We need to get them better and get them back to a team.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, this is perfect. I get blessed off by the Thor 3 program, which says I'm good to go back to an ODA, then I can deploy. That's how I war gamed it in my head. So I start the Thor 3 program, and it was brutal. It was brutal, especially Paul. Paul was him and I are close, but he ran us through what they, how they get fighters back with mixed martial arts and stuff like that, and it was horrible. I never experienced fitness on that level, but I got cleared, and March 2012.
And then the team also, they didn't have an 18C guy yet, right? So it was something that was like almost like you will fit in right away.
So how that kind of worked out was my plan worked out finally for once in my life the way I planned it out. So I went up to the the S1 or the administration office, like, hey, I got hurt. I didn't say injured. I got hurt. I went through Thor 3. I got cleared. Here's the letter from our group surgeon that I'm good to go back to a team. My company is in Afghanistan right now. And he's like, okay, name. And I was like, oh, they're going to know it now. Once they get my social security number, I'm screwed. And he goes, okay, yep, we got a flight. We got a C-17 heading out on March, whatever it was. So, yeah, that's your ride over there. I was like, so me, heading over. Nothing came up with anything non-deployable. Okay, sounds good. So, yeah, I'm back on a flight heading over to Afghanistan, and I get there, and the sergeant major that said, hey, if you can get fit and back, I'll send you back to war. So I meet up with him, and he's like, well, I got to admit, I'm kind of surprised, but I'm a man of my word. This is 2012. He said, and we were taking a lot of casualties. And he said, hey, man, I hope you're ready for this, because where you're going is really bad. And so I got orders to head back to an ODA that was in Panjwai district, Kandahar province, which in 2012 was arguably the most IED'd area in Afghanistan. And so, yeah, I'm heading back to war. All right. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm going to probably the most IED'd area in all of Afghanistan at that point in time.
Wow, and then not only that, with that lag that you had, I mean, what I understand, it was you guys had to conquer this specific hill, like a very tough hill to get up. I mean, there were even guys who pretty much gave up doing
Yeah.
those are the sissies we were talking about before. They had no business of being there. I mean, once you start complaining and saying it to other people, I mean, this is not a good thing. Once you start saying that. But you just did it. Not only that, the person who couldn't carry their own stuff anymore, you started adding that stuff also to your stuff. And we're talking about now you're carrying 100 pounds extra with an injured leg. Well, of course, it's not injured anymore. It came back, but that's a real test.
Yeah. So I knew that I had to convince, because there was going to be more deployments coming up. And I knew that I had to make a name for myself, that I was not a liability.
Yep.
And so this mission came up to where the command element wanted to get in one last mission before we were going to rip out of country. And so the battalion commander, battalion command sergeant major, I mean, there's just everybody's there on this mission because they want to get in the mix too. And you're not really in the mix, but they want to get out, boots on the ground, and get in mission. So they needed an 18 Charlie, and I weaseled my way onto that mission because I knew that if I was going to ever put to bed that non-deployable rating that I had to do it right here.
Yep.
So the hilltop, as they call it, but this was no hill. This was horrible. It was literally, I think it was like 1,200, or hilltop 2,000. It was 2,000 feet in elevation gain in about a kilometer. So that's pretty much going up. It was maybe a little over a kilometer. And we were going to the top of Hilltop 2000, so the command element could overwatch the valley clearance, which was happening in the next 24 hours. So we were the first boots on the ground to this. And we had all kinds of people with us, from Green Berets to support troops. As we start heading up this mountain, there were a couple guys that packed a little too heavy and didn't hydrate and didn't do stuff like that. And so in the end, not in the end, but about halfway up, we get to a point to where one guy is like, I can't go any further. And he's heat exhaustion. So I understand the rhetoric, but it's leave me here. And it's like, dude, this isn't a fucking Western, man. This is war. And if you get rolled up, it's going to be really bad for you. So you don't do that. So we have to cross load his gear. Well, I'm not big on like being a spotlight, ranger, or like, hey, look at me. But there is a time and place to do that. And I knew that command had to see me cross loading gear into my bag, and they know my injuries because I was asked extensively, are you sure you're good to be back here? I did. I kind of put myself in a position to where they could see that I'm loading down my bag too. My ruck, and continue moving on. And it did. And so that was the mission that it basically put to sleep any concerns of Ryan Hendrickson and his reattached limb and his non-deployable status that Big Army had. After that, I went back to Afghanistan 5 more times, and every trip they're like, who is non-deployable? What? Oh, it's just Ryan. No, he's fine. Yes, I know it says that. Trust me, he's good. Don't worry about Ryan. And so, but it was that mission, Hilltop 2000, that put all that aside. And it's not because I'm a beast. No. But I realized, and I learned it on that hilltop, and I learned it in wrestling, and I learned it, in BUDS and the Q course and selection, that your mind gives up before your body does. Your mind will tell you you're done, but that's a protective measure. You really haven't even tapped into what you're capable of when your mind says you're done. And some people, when you listen to that, then you're done. And you can't go any further. But a lot of our training that we go through, and I can guarantee fighters have the same thing, is you've just begun once your mind says you're done.
No, 100%. You know, and more stuff happened, by the way, also for you. How do I say this? So let's not go into, because I want to go in that you when you stepped into human waste and the whole stuff, and that there's a lot happened. But I think it's great for the people just to read that book because it's really good. I want to know now what happened because I know because I read the book. But so for the people at home, so you said 5, 6 more tours. When was the final straw that you got out? Because then once you were out, now you were missing that stuff again, and you fell back into your own routine, your old routine a little bit again, the drinking.
Yeah. So I was always battling demons, and this was still even on active duty. I was still battling my demons, but thankfully I had these deployments to look forward to, these combat deployments. So you get yourself to that next deployment, and yeah, along the way, I mean, there was to kind of suppress a lot of the I don't know if it's feelings or emotions or no demons.
Demons,
I was
100%.
using alcohol to suppress my demons to get me to that next deployment, to where I was back in what I understood. I was back in the fight. I was back, into normalcy. I wasn't at a grocery store wanting to rip this guy's head off because he's reading every single soup label can there is, and you can't get by him.
Yep.
And that's a dangerous mindset, and it kind of sounds funny, but it's very realistic.
Yep.
And so for me, it was always to get me to that next deployment. But alcohol became a pretty stable thing to suppress those demons instead of facing them and actually dealing with them, because I don't have time.
Yep.
And nor do I really care. I want to get to that next deployment where I'm normal, where I can be this animal. Once I'm there, or once you're in the cage, you can be that animal that you have to suppress when you're not in that environment. And it's very hard to do that. And so, alcohol became kind of, it was what would get me through to that next deployment. And it's that's a dangerous mindset too.
Dangerous mindset. But your wife, Dawn, who I met, a lovely lady, I mean, she kind of set you straight there, right? She's been you would say your rock in the relationship.
Yeah. No, I mean, she definitely did. And there was a point in time, this was after the 2016 deployment, where I was having, just kind of becoming a victim again of that deployment. Cause we had some bad stuff happen on that deployment. And there was a couple fights where we lost, a lot of our partner force, which, is never a good day.
Yep.
But I came back with this entitled mindset that I didn't really know how to handle, because it was different. That 16 deployment was probably the bloodiest one I've been on, and I didn't know how to handle all that. So then again, I went back. I started to fall back into that. You don't understand. You're not. And blah blah blah. The list goes on. And my anger, I started seeing my temper get a lot worse, because, in the end, if it's a bar fight or something like that, okay, got it. But I started wanting to, hurt people because they were in my way. Yep. They were, I guess, impeding me from what whether it was the grocery store or someone driving too slow or something like that. And an incident happened where this guy cut me off, and I chased him all the way to his house, forgetting it's the state of Florida and everybody has handguns. And badass fighter or whatever, Green Beret, guess what? That 9mm round doesn't care.
Yep.
And then finally she starts screaming to get my attention. And I kind of come out of this I guess trance in front of this guy's house. And this guy had taken off sprinting inside his house, and I was going to go in the house after him, which would have completely ruined my career.
Yep.
I think they call that a home invasion. I don't know. But
it's frowned upon.
Yeah, it's frowned upon in most countries. But I realized, like, wow, I'm going down fast.
Yep.
Downward spiral extremely fast. And I need to get control over this. But I had that next deployment coming up in the 2017 trip because we did 3 back-to-backs. And so I start talking to our chaplain, and he and I tell him, and he's like, hey, yeah, have you really talked to anybody about it? I was like, I tried, but in the end, it's all just dead air. Like, you and I, we can sit there and we can have a beer and I can spill my guts to you. And then when you go home to your family and I go home to mine, what was really accomplished? Nothing. It's just dead air.
Yep.
And I was like, it's still there. I can't get it off. I can't talk it off of my chest or my conscience. I can't talk this off. I don't know how to do this. And he's like, well, have you ever thought about writing? I was like, no, I'm a dumbass farm boy. No, I haven't ever thought about writing. And he goes, well, there is, and I forgot, he had named some name, but it's an actual thing. It's writing therapy. And he's like, a lot of people benefit from it, man.
Yep.
He goes, just think about it or not. Well, the 2017 trip, I was getting to this point to where I was like, I need a release, and I can't, I can't talk this out. I can't, combat this out. Adrenaline's not like, I need a release. And so I was like, yeah, let me just write a little something down. This is what's bothering me right now. And it was relieving. It felt amazing because I wasn't trying to make it disappear. I wasn't trying to get rid of it. I was just taking it from one place to another, because that's where a lot of people fail when it comes to mental health, is they want that situation or that incident or that catastrophic, whatever it was in life, they want it to disappear like it never happened.
Yep.
That's impossible. That will never happen.
Never work.
It is always going to be a part of your life. Regardless of what it was, that incident will be a part of your life. You cannot do anything about it. And once I realized that you can't make this disappear, this is a part of you, you have to learn how to function with this. I started writing and writing and writing and writing. And one page turns into 10 to 100 and I'm just, I'd wake up at 3:00 in the morning when I had a dream about something, write it out. And it was so relieving because I wasn't going to make it disappear. I was just taking it from here and I was putting it there. And I don't know what brain function that feeds or what chemical or I don't know, but it did it for me. And apparently it's a thing.
Getting it off your chest. That's what it is. That's what you do at the shrink. You're talking, you just put it on paper, and writing things down. For me, when I need to understand something and really get into it, I write with my hands. Writing notes. It's very important not to type it, when you really want it ingrained in your mind. This is beautiful, man. There's so much similarities, and I'm so happy. Like, I'm doing these talks, for people, things to avoid, because I went through a lot of stuff myself as well. And, learning from your mistakes and how can I not make them anymore? And all the shots that I hit, all the points. I mean, your number in your book the whole time. You remember when I called you, I go, man, this is crazy. I'm reading your book. It's like we have so many similarities, but you learn from your mistakes. And look at what you're doing right now. You're freaking changing me. You're changing people who are reading the book, You're in a much healthier relationship. I mean, the guys we met at the bar, amazing people. Everybody, this is it. Are you doing public speaking? Is that something already you're thinking about?
So I am thinking about it. I've done a few of them, and I would like to get out there and share my message, because I believe that. So when people take advice from somebody, you don't take advice from the guy that hasn't been through it. Why?
100%.
Because you don't know what I'm going through.
Yep.
Who are you to talk to me about this? You're up there and I'm down here. So it kind of seems like you're talking down to me.
Yep.
People want to talk to the guy that went through it. Like, hey man, I got it.
Yep.
And what I mean by I got it is, here's my story. And once I finally was able to to suck up my pride. And because when it came to, this journal and turning it into a book, it was a huge pride problem because I was worried, what would people think about me? How is this going to be perceived? And again, the old man, batting 1,000 came through and he's like, you're a selfish son of a bitch, dude. You have a message that could potentially save someone's life, yet you're worried about what a few clowns may think about it.
Yep.
He goes, I didn't think I raised a selfish kid, but maybe I was wrong. I was like, damn.
Wow. Yeah, your dad he had a few really good talks with you. The one that with the old guy, I love that expression. The one that I use to my students is very simple. Henry Ford actually made it. He said, how do you want to be remembered? And if you really listen to that question, when you die, how do you want to be remembered? That should put you on the right path of life. But it's exactly the same as what your dad told you, but he flipped it into the story with the 2 old men and one he didn't do enough. Which old man do you want to be? And I love that. So that book, like I said, all the things that I'm talking about in my talks, you're hitting them left and right. That's why you have to, in my opinion, you're going to have to start speaking.
Yeah, and it is. So, with putting my pride aside and actually publishing the book and whatnot like that. Now, it is. I'm constantly learning. Which is a good thing. And there's a lot of people think like, oh well, yeah, you look at what you overcame. Life must be great for you. No. It's a constant battle. What I talk about. If you don't continue to sharpen that sword, it's going to dull and you can fall right back into all that stuff that I could have easily became one of the 22 a day.
Yep.
And I talk about that. And that's a huge pride problem for me, is actually talking about some of my darkest moments when if the stars would have aligned a little bit different, we wouldn't be talking right now. But that has to be talked about. People's pride that have faced that demon. You have to share this story because a lot of people they're losing that fight with the demon, and I've lost a lot of friends to suicide, and so I know that it's a real thing, and people have to be able to, especially with law enforcement today. Law enforcement is getting chewed up with suicide.
Unbelievable. Yep.
And there has to be people that have been at that point. They have to talk. And a lot of reasons why people don't is it's a pride problem. Why? Because I have a big pride problem that I have to continually keep in check because somebody could benefit from this message.
Yep. No, listen. No. Pride is the biggest one. Is the biggest one to conquer. People don't realize. And it's not proud me saying, oh, I'm a Green Beret walking around and saying this, I'm a 4-time world champion. That's not the pride I'm talking about. It's the little things. The little things, holding a door open for somebody who doesn't thank you and you want to say something.
I'm
that's
horrible with that.
Horrible. If you say hi to somebody and he doesn't say hi back, and I would in the past go, okay, thank you too, or some stupid thing I would say, and I go like, dude, you don't know what these people are going through. Maybe he's very introvert. Maybe you don't know the situation. If you do all these things, you do it because you love it. You love people. You shouldn't do it for a thank you, is what I always say. So that it's and talking about it and showing your weaknesses in this book, that's what made the book interesting. I'm telling you, and that's why people are going to love it if they read it. So you got to really pick it up. Tip of the spear. That's very important. How is the life now? We're going to come to the end of the interview, but I would just like to hear a day in the life of Ryan now. What does that look like? It's not what people say, oh, he wakes up and the sun is shining and he's walking outside, It's never like that, but it's much better, right? Because now you have a goal. What is the goal?
So now I've kind of really adopted, and I enjoy the feeling I get from helping people. And it's not because I'm this great person and I just want to help people, but I get a lot out of helping people too. It's good for me.
Yep.
So when Russia invaded Ukraine in February, I had this calling. and there was, there's a couple of avenues I could have took. Zelensky was asking for fighters for his international legion and whatnot. But I've done a lot of trigger pulling. And so I don't think, fighting was the route I was looking for. So I was talking to one of my buddies, David Cunningham, who is in the missionary world. And he said, hey, and we were just, I was telling him I wasn't fulfilled with my job that I was doing right then. I was still battling a lot with how we left Afghanistan, because I left Afghanistan July 2021. And then we all know how that boiled down in August 2021. But so I'm dealing with that. And I was just like, I don't know, man. I got to do something, because I'm starting to fall back onto the old Ryan, and I don't want to go there. And we're in a dangerous time right now. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just go to Ukraine and see what trouble I can get into. And he's like, you want to think? And it's like, probably not, man. But I want to help.
Yeah.
And he goes, would you go over there and fight? And I was like, I don't think so. I'm good on the fighting part. I don't know, man. I think I just kind of want to help. And he was like, well, I mean, I know some people in Ukraine that are that are missionaries. I was like, well, I'm not really like going over there to spread the word of God. Yeah, people need to hear it, but I want to go over there and help. And he goes, well, this group that's over there, my family kind of started it. So I didn't realize his family started this international missionary organization years ago. But what they wanted somebody with, military and combat experience that could embed in with the missionaries over there, that what we were doing is driving around and picking up refugees and getting them to drop off points to get them to burning countries at the time. And then as Russia started to pull out the suburbs around, Kyiv, then we were bringing in food, water, supplies. And I was like, yeah, I can 100% do that. I can drive. I could be an advisor to, so guys don't roll up on a Russian checkpoint like, no, it's okay. We're missionaries. You guys, we're fine. It's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. So I went over there just on a whim, but it was actually God opening doors for me.
Yep.
But I went over there and we started off with personnel evacuations and then moved into to food and all that other stuff. And so I went there March to May, but the whole time I was there, there was this one, the ugly part of war kept rearing its head that I understood very well. And that was what was buried underneath the ground. Landmines everywhere. And there was villages completely landmined because it was a defensive position for either Ukrainians or Russians or whoever it was. And they would pull out, but they didn't indicate on the map that it was a minefield here. So now villagers are hitting mines going back in. I was like, well, who's cleaning all this up? Like, well, the military doesn't have the numbers right now. They have some units, but the job is just too big. We don't have enough people. And I was like, okay, well,
put me in, coach.
This is kind of up my alley. I mean, and if nobody's shooting at me, I can find some landmines. If I don't have the pressure of getting shot in the face, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so I just started to formulate this plan. The 2 months that I was there, I was like, I'm going to go back, and I'm not only going to find mines, but I'm going to train people that want to learn. And I'm going to go out to these villages. I'm going to align with the Christian church over there and say, hey, where do you guys need help at? I'm going to, because I want to stay bipartisan. I don't want to be linked to either government, even though I do need the Ukrainian government's permission to go into areas and find mines and whatnot. But I want to, I'm doing it through my faith and a faith-based concept. And I'm going to go back in and train people up. I'm actually leaving in 3 days, train people up, and we're going to clear areas of landmines. And then hopefully this turns into kind of a movement, because I'm thinking about, Ukraine's not the only area in the world with a landmine, IED, booby trap, UXO issue.
Wow.
And there are demining organizations out there, but it wouldn't be a global crisis if there was enough to take care of the issue. So, I'm thinking about throwing my hat in the ring as far as like a faith-based nonprofit demining organization that we preach the word of God through our actions. Why are you here? Well, I'm glad you asked. But if you don't ask, then you're never really going to know. I'm not going to shove it down your throat. But if you want to know why I'm here, then we can talk.
You thought you were out, but they pulled you right back in, right?
Yeah, and it's that high of helping people.
It's really cool.
Again, it's addicting because it does so much for you too.
It really is. And I have the same thing. I have hundreds of emails that I wrote to parents with kids who have the same skin disease and the same things, the diseases that I had as a kid. And for me, and of course I tell them, I say, listen, I got a copy and paste version ready for you because I know exactly the questions you're going to ask, but just that interaction and then with the parents, and they go like, man, you're helping people, and if you, it's always what they say, and it might be so cheesy, but it's so 100% true. If you just save one life, one person from not committing suicide, mission accomplished. Everything else is the freaking icing on the cake. What was the name of that missionary organization? So we'll give her a little bit of a highlight.
So it's called YWAM, and it's called Youth with a Mission, which sounds like a bunch of kids, and that's what I thought it was going to be. But then I got out there and I was like, oh, you guys are. Why is it called Youth with a Mission? And he was like, that's just what my dad came up with back in the 60s. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So,
when he was a kid.
Good. Yeah. So.
Right on, Ryan. Hey, listen, thank you so much for doing this interview. We covered a lot, and it's I on purpose didn't touch on a bunch of stuff from the book because I want the people to read the book. I think it's very important that you go and get this book because it's a help book. It will help you. It will fulfill you, and all the things, the struggles that you have. We all have the same struggles, only a little bit different. But the attachment and the way you handle it and the way you attack it, it's all the same stuff. In whatever profession you are. He just happens to be in a really crazy submission, this guy right here. We talked about it when we were in the bar, with us, with fighting, it's like, oh, I get hit and then the referee comes and he stops it. With you, oh, you get your leg blown off. You see what I mean? It could be much different. And then you were lucky enough that IED that you stepped on, only 1/3 went off, right? Otherwise it would have been bye-bye, Ryan. So you see, there's always these things, and like you said, with the Lord, and it's all for a reason, I'm telling you. And here we are, and now we're talking. Otherwise, anything would be out of order. We even wouldn't be talking right now. It's that ripple effect that I always say. So yes, whatever situation you're in, if it's really bad, well, it brought you to this situation. Now it's exactly what your dad said. Deal with it. And make sure that you're going to be an old man who's going to be happy about himself and the way he dealt with it. So, big story, my friend. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Be very safe over there. I'm a little worried when you start saying that you want to look for mines again, but like you said already, it's without the shooting. It's much easier, I hope, but you got the metal detectors and all that kind of stuff, but I'm pretty sure there's mines out there now that metal detectors don't work on. Have to be. Right, so be safe, my friend. I say hi to Don, and then hopefully see you soon again. I might be in Florida a few times. I will tell you about it. It's a karate combat. It's an organization. It's full contact karate that I do over there. So if you are going to be in town, I will let you know, and then come in as one of the VIP guys.
Yeah, that's awesome, definitely. And if not, I'll be heading back down your way anyway, or over your way, I guess it would be. We'll definitely meet up again, and I'll keep you posted on the content that I take, because I think everyone needs to know. So I'll be doing a lot of videos of removing mines and going from there. So
right on, brother. Godspeed. Oh shoot! You see, there we got the karate scene: to push and to endure. Godspeed.
All right.